When I asked if I could review this amp right in front of me, the TS A75, I made a big mistake. This was incredibly embarrassing. A few weeks ago, I reviewed the Galion TS Voyager transmission line speakers, and man, that's a mouthful. But after reviewing those speakers, I wanted to know what they sounded like with the Galion TS A75 amplifier. So I contacted Thomas at Galion Audio and asked if I could check this one out as well, just to hear how it sounded, how those speakers sounded paired with the amp, the solid state amp right here. So he sent me one and it showed up and I was excited to try it out, opened up the box, pulled it out, heavy little sucker, and ouch. Watch. Hey, how's it going? Do you remember that preamp I gave you? Can I borrow it back? I don't know, maybe a month? Okay, how about 2 weeks? Yeah, I know. Okay. All right, thanks. Yeah, I completely forgot that I gave my preamp away when I bought the Galion TS120 tube integrated amp. Because it was an integrated amp, I didn't need my preamp. So I gave it away. I gave it to a friend who was looking for one. I should have kept it, but I had no idea at the time that I'd be doing these type of reviews then. So when I pulled this out of the box, and I wasn't kidding earlier when I said it's heavy, this is a solid piece of gear. It's easily, I would say 50 pounds. So I immediately noticed there's no volume knobs on this. And then it hit me, oh, well, duh, it's a power amp. There's not going to be a volume knob. You need a preamplifier for that. It's as basic as it gets when it comes to operation. So let's get to that. But first, before I do, I want to tell you about today's sponsor. And no, it's not Galion Audio, it's Sidetracked Workshop. And I really wish I had known about Sidetracked Workshop and the work they do before I was in the market for a new record storage cabinet to handle my overflows. Check this out. Beautiful, right? These are all handmade in the US by Sidetracked Workshop. And they aren't made with cheap materials either, which is another reason I wish I'd known about them sooner. It's all high quality, sturdy wood construction in a mid-century modern design. And if you know me, I'm a sucker for mid-century design. It can even handle your turntable as well. The cool thing about these too is they are completely shipped for free in the US, and you don't have to do anything to put them together. When they show up, you just screw the feet in, find a great spot to showcase your records, and slide a few in. The fact that it's fully assembled that's amazing to me. But anyway, the folks at Sidetracked Workshop were kind enough to offer any viewers of this channel a 15% discount. So just, check in the description, I'll put it in there, and you just pop it in at checkout. So back to the A75. So as I was saying, this amp is very basic on the outside. So let me spin this around so you can see it a little bit better. You have your inputs nicely spaced out for the front and left channels. You also have the option to select RCA or XLR. And then there's the speaker outputs. Easy, right? And then there's the front. It's just one button. That's it. Just one. Power on, power off. I told you there's not much to see on the outside, except for these large heat sinks to dissipate the heat. And, it does put out heat because it's a power amp. Now let's talk about that. This is a Class AB amp. Now, as far as wattage goes, if you're driving in 8 ohm speakers, this puts out 75 continuous watts, thus the A75 in the name. If you're driving 4 ohm speakers, you're going to get 100 watts out of this. There are two 200 watt transformers under the hood, as well as 20 capacitors. So there's a lot more going on inside this amp than's going on outside of the amp. So once I got hold of my old preamp, I hooked the A75 up and immediately grabbed an Aretha Franklin record. I wanted to hear how she sounded with the A75, paired with the Galion transmission line speakers. I had looked up the product page of the A75 when I had asked to try this out. And again, I should have noticed that, or I should have thought, hey, I'm looking at a power amp that I'm asking to try out. I need a preamp, but let's forget about that piece of stupidity on my part. Anyway, it did mention that that the vocals, you can, they're so good that you can actually hear the artist's vocal cords. I mean, it's an old, I think cliche quote from the past, but I can't say that that stands true. You don't hear the vocal cords, but the voice, Aretha's voice, at least when I was listening to the Aretha Franklin record, sounded amazing, through this amp. It reminded me, there was warmth there, and it reminded me, I'd have to say, a little bit of my TS-120 integrated tube amp. I'm all about tube amps. This is solid state, obviously, but it still had, warmth. Maybe not the laid back warmth of a tube amp. This is a very dynamic amp, but there was still something about it that reminded me of my TS-120. I then tried something a bit harder, and this might surprise some of you, but I pulled out Aerosmith's Rock in a Hard Place. And I know it's not everyone's favorite Aerosmith album. Joe Perry had left the band at that point, but the engineering on this record is incredible. It's a good test of soundstage and imaging. It's also a great test of treble. I'd heard, and I can't remember where, maybe it was from Thomas, but the treble on this was supposed to have been brought a bit more forward. Now, I didn't get that, which is a good thing for me because I have trouble with treble. Trouble with treble. I like that. Anyway, I have trouble with treble. And the high end was airy, but not shrill. I could also attribute that to the pairing with the Voyager TLs. I then popped in Freeze, Fire, and Water, and you all know I'm a classic rock fan, and the bass was beautiful in its presentation. Now, this all made me want to hear this amp through my KLH Model 5s, which I absolutely love my KLH Model 5s. So I hooked it up to those. And the A75 delivered there as well. My primary listening room is small, and I have a whole video on this. My wife redesigned the room, so there's no need to push the volume up in that small of a room. And even at a lower volume, say at around 75 dB, bass was really prominent, and in a very good way. It wasn't thumping or anything like that, but it was right where it was supposed to be. I then figured I'd throw some jazz on to really test the bass, so I selected Charles Mingus's Tijuana Moods. It was another great experience when paired with the A75 and my Model 5s. So what would you expect to pay for the A75? Well, it's a lot less than you'd expect for an amp of this quality. At the time that I'm recording this on the Galion website, I believe it's $14.95. But please don't make my mistake and forget about the fact that you need a preamp with this. It's a power amp, and you really can't ask for anything more. Now that I've had a chance to, test this out, it's time to send my Voyager transmission line speakers as well as this back to Thomas. So there's going to be a big void in my review room now. I'm going to miss seeing those Voyager TLs on my speaker stands. And, well, my friend can get his preamp back. And as always, let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. And while we're at it, just tap the like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have already, thank you. So until next time, as always, take care of yourself. I'll see you next week, and enjoy your records.